Most people believe wealth belongs to the clever, the credentialed, the naturally gifted. But wealth, in truth, belongs to the strategically aware. One of Machiavelli's core principles was that fortune rewards those who move with purpose, not pedigree. I once thought you needed an elite background to get rich, until I stood in a room of high earners and realized something sobering: intelligence was not the currency there. One man stumbled through a stage presentation, clearly lacking charisma, presence, or wit. But he casually mentioned he couldn't break past $400,000 a month. In that instant, my paradigm shattered. I walked out and called my father. I told him I would never again trade time for a paycheck, because if that man, no sharper than any of us, could extract wealth from the world, then wealth was not reserved for the brilliant. It was reserved for those who understood the game. You see, strategy eats intelligence for breakfast. Most so-called smart people paralyze themselves in endless risk calculations. But the one who dares methodically, not blindly, wins. The overly intellectual man sees all the ways a venture could fail. The Machiavellian man asks only, can the consequences destroy me? If not, proceed. The great mistake of modern education is that it teaches men to analyze, not to act. Yet wealth follows those who move before others understand the terrain. You don't have to be a genius. You need to stay in the game long enough to accumulate strategic leverage, skills, relationships, and patience. Most wealth is accrued not through sudden brilliance, but by withstanding longer winters. The irony is that the less intelligent often take the boldest steps, because they're not crippled by overthinking. The man too conscious of the storm never leaves the port. But Machiavelli would say, it is better to act and repent than to hesitate and be devoured by time. And when I look at the most successful people I've met, I see something in common. Not intelligence, but emotional durability, a kind of dumb faith in the grind, coupled with the discipline to remain strategically consistent. I couldn't even use proper grammar when I first made money. But what I could do was endure boredom, embarrassment, and failure without quitting. This is the hidden truth. Intelligence without execution is impotence. It's better to be slightly naive but unrelentingly active. Machiavelli observed that people judge more by appearances than substance. This principle governs modern business. Appear confident, stay consistent, and deliver value over time. The world begins to assume you belong, and eventually, it becomes true. Ask yourself not if you're smart enough. Ask if you're willing to remain in motion while others doubt. Quit or overthink. Because money flows not to those who know more, but to those who risk more with less certainty. Wealth doesn't accumulate steadily. It arrives in sudden bursts after long droughts. The man who cannot survive the desert never reaches the oasis. Most people expect money to trickle in as soon as effort is applied. But effort, in the real world, is delayed currency. The work you do today pays you tomorrow, or next year. In the early years of building my first company, I wasn't just earning slowly. I was hemorrhaging money. And yet, at my lowest point, when it seemed like collapse was inevitable, it all clicked. Revenue exploded from $0 to $7 million in 6 months. Why? Because compounding rewards the man who can endure silence longer than others can bear. This is what Machiavelli understood about power. Those who control time, control outcomes. Most men squander their patience by seeking early validation. But if you can delay gratification, your enemies, competitors, even friends will disqualify themselves. Discipline is its own elimination tool. I've seen it again and again. The more wealth someone wants to create, the longer they must operate without applause. And this is why so few do it. They can't handle being unseen. But wealth is built in obscurity. then revealed in shock. Savings, in this game, are not about becoming rich. They're about buying time. I paid off my debts and built what I call a break glass in case of failure fund. Not to build wealth, but to unlock aggression. Once I knew my basic life was covered, I could take big, calculated swings without desperation. I invested millions into ventures that would have paralyzed me without that buffer. You can't act like a king if you're worried about feeding yourself tomorrow. So no, saving won't make you a billionaire, but it will give you the oxygen to build something that might. Most people think they need more money before they can act. But what they actually need is more courage. Machiavelli said, "All courses of action are risky." So prudence consists in choosing the least dangerous ones. What's dangerous is remaining in the safety of a job while the years pass and your upside shrinks. I once tried to skip the hard part. 2, I bought a rental property, convinced that I'd unlocked the secret of making money while I sleep. Instead, I ended up losing $20,000 and wasting months managing problems I didn't understand. Passive income, I learned, is not passive at all. It is the reward for active competence. Investing is not the shortcut. It's the second game. First, you master making money. Then, you learn how to protect and multiply it. I tried to jump into the second game without truly mastering the first, and I paid the price. Every investment still requires skill. Evaluating risk, negotiating terms, understanding markets. There is no vehicle that will do the work for you. Even the most hands-off asset demands experience and vigilance. Before your money can work for you, you must prove that you can work for it. And if you want to know why most never escape the rat race, it's this: they chase the fantasy of effort-free wealth. But Machiavelli would remind you, fortune is a woman, and she favors boldness, not wishful thinking, not passive hopes, but bold, skillful pursuit. You do not seduce fortune by imagining her. You pursue her relentlessly, with strategy, until she yields. And in the game of money, you are not owed anything for your good intentions. The world pays you only when it is forced to, by value, by problem solving, or by excellence so undeniable that money has no choice but to find you. There's a moment in every ambitious person's life when they realize money doesn't chase effort. It chases value. You can work all day, grind all night, and still struggle if your output is replaceable. But the man who becomes irreplaceable, who solves problems others can't or won't, enters a different economy altogether. I learned this as a personal trainer. I was trying everything to get clients, while others seemed to have an endless stream of them. One of my early mentors told me, "Forget the hustle, be the best." It sounded simplistic. But over time, I realized greatness generates gravity. When you're truly excellent, clients and money orbit around you. Machiavelli knew that reputation is a more potent weapon than armies. It is not titles that honor men, but men that honor titles. So I set out to build proof, not just marketing hype, but tangible transformations, results that couldn't be denied. I entered competitions, pushed myself harder than any client ever would. And once the market saw that I embodied the standard, demand overwhelmed me. Not because I begged for attention, but because I had become the solution people needed. Money always moves toward value, and excellence in any field creates value if it's visible. There's a reason a celebrity trainer earns more than a YMCA coach. It's not because they do different exercises. It's because one has aligned perceived status with real transformation. And in a Machiavellian world, perception is half the game. Once you prove you can produce elite results, the market will inflate your worth, often far beyond the actual effort required to maintain it. I built businesses not by chasing cash, but by obsessing over outcomes. I didn't ask, "How can I get rich?" I asked. How can I dominate this category so thoroughly that people have no alternative? That's a different question. One demands clarity, the other invites delusion. And the answer to that question led me to pour millions into infrastructure, product and skill acquisition, not because it felt good, but because I understood that in the war for attention and trust, excellence is your only armor. But here's the catch: value is relative. You might be solving a problem, but is it painful enough for people to pay for? I once invested in a promising SaaS company that solved a problem, just not one urgent or unique enough. It plateaued and sold for a modest sum. The same founder launched a protein bar company that tackled a completely different problem: gut issues, bad taste, and bloating, things people hated about every other bar. That product exploded, not because it did more, but because it removed more pain. Remember, the value of a solution is directly tied to the pain it relieves or the pleasure it delivers. In Machiavellian terms, a prince secures power not by ruling gently, but by removing his rivals. Likewise, a product doesn't win because it's good. It wins because it makes competitors obsolete. And your wealth is a direct measure of how completely you do that. Look at my journey. I went from helping individuals lose weight to helping gym owners get customers, to helping business owners build companies they could sell. With each level, the problem became harder, and the payoff multiplied. Wealth, then, is not earned. It is extracted through leverage, mastery, and positioning, and it flows in proportion to the scale and difficulty of the problems you solve. The man who removes friction from a billion-dollar system will earn more in a month than the man who fixes small issues for small businesses his whole life. But he cannot start there. No one begins with systemic leverage. You begin at the bottom, solving local problems, stacking credibility, and learning to wield your tools. And each time you level up, you don't just earn more, you become more formidable. So ask yourself, what pain are you solving? Who else is solving it? And what would it take to do it better? Faster, cheaper, or more completely than anyone else? If the answer scares you, good. That's the right problem. And in a world that rewards problem solvers with wealth and permanence, it is not ambition that pays. It is ruthless competence. There is no nobility in staying broke, but there is honor in enduring the humiliation of starting from nothing. The man who refuses to do low-status work in the beginning is the man who remains poor forever. I remember working as a fitness guide after college, escorting an out-of-shape guest on a trail. Halfway through the hike, he looked at me and said, "I'm just grateful there are people like you who do this kind of work." I could have been insulted. But in that moment, I smiled, because I knew something he didn't. I was willing to suffer now so I could dominate later. The ones who win are rarely the ones with pride. They're the ones who delay pride for power. Machiavelli wrote, "It is much safer to be feared than loved if you cannot be both. The man who fears discomfort will never be feared. The man who refuses to serve will never be served. There is no shame in labor, only in stagnation. And those who humble themselves enough to start at the bottom expose themselves to far more opportunity than those who wait for perfect conditions. Poverty is not a moral failure, but remaining in it by refusing to act is a strategic one. The moment you start counting someone else's money, you disqualify yourself from making your own. Watching someone else's success will not produce your own. There was a deal once that I walked away from, not because it didn't meet my goals, but because I became fixated on how much the other party stood to gain. A partner whispered in my ear, "He's going to make $500 million, and we're doing all this work." I listened, and I lost. That company skyrocketed in value over the years, far exceeding our projections. Why? Because I let envy override strategy. Machiavelli warned, Men judge generally more by the eye than by the hand. I judged a deal by how it looked emotionally, not how it functioned economically. And that mistake cost me. The wealthy understand that abundance isn't zero-sum, that someone else getting rich does not prevent you from doing the same. Counting other people's pockets is the peasant's mindset. The king counts territory, not treasure. He expands his empire without needing to subtract from another's. The obsession with fairness is a trap. In business, the best deals are often the ones where everyone believes they got the better end. When you negotiate from resentment, you close the wrong doors. When you negotiate from vision, you open the right ones. And if scrolling social media makes you bitter about who earns what, unfollow, disconnect, and return to your mission. Because focus is your most valuable currency, and envy is a tax on your attention. Here's another lie that keeps people stuck: the belief that mindset precedes money, that you must feel rich to become rich, that you must believe in yourself before acting. I didn't believe I could make $1 million. I didn't believe I was capable of earning hundreds of millions. I simply copied the behavior of someone who did. And through action, belief followed. Machiavelli would scoff at the idea of manifesting power without exertion. In his view, power is never granted. It is seized. At one point, I was reading every book on wealth and trying to change my money mindset. I gave my groceries to homeless men, thinking I was attracting abundance. Nothing changed. Then I met my mentor. I told him what I was doing, and he said, "Money doesn't discriminate. It goes to the one who works." That line hit like a sword. From that day on, I stopped trying to rewire my thoughts and started rewiring my behavior. The truth is, every action you take is a vote for who you're becoming, and no belief can override the laws of cause and effect. The man who chops wood warms his home. The man who reads about fire freezes. If you want to be wealthy, behave like someone who earns more than you. Take risk, solve harder problems, sacrifice comfort for sovereignty. You don't need more books. You don't need permission. You need movement. And if you're still uncertain, let me leave you with this: the world does not pay you for your intentions. It pays you for the pain you eliminate, the structure you build, and the dominance you earn. Fortune is not kind, but she is obedient to those who act.